We all like to believe that we're inherently kind, fair-minded individuals, utterly incapable of committing cruel or inhumane acts. But what if the right, or wrong, set of circumstances could awaken something within you that you never even suspected existed, a shadowy side, something truly monstrous? The uncomfortable truth is that the boundary between good and evil isn't as sharply defined as we prefer to imagine. It's a delicate edge that often lies much closer to our everyday lives than we're willing to acknowledge. We exist in a complex world where tough choices, extreme pressures, and overwhelming influences can twist even the purest intentions into behaviors we'd never dare to envision. Today, we're going to delve into this unsettling yet crucial aspect of reality. Let's plunge into the depths of human psychology, uncover what drives us to cross that invisible line, and, perhaps most vitally, explore what steps we can take to resist it. Have you ever paused to consider that your sense of morality, that inner compass guiding your every decision, might be as flexible and vulnerable as a leaf caught in a gust of wind? What truly defines us as good or bad isn't as straightforward as we'd like to think. Our ethical framework, often viewed as an unshakable fortress, can crumble in mere moments under the right, or wrong, conditions, leading someone to adopt behaviors that shatter their self-image entirely. Renowned psychologist Philip Zimbardo describes this moral fragility as a kind of situational transformation. He argues that we're not fixed beings. Instead, we're molded by our surroundings, the pressures of the environment, and above all, the stories we craft to rationalize our choices. To illustrate, let's examine the case of Ivan Frederick, an American soldier who, before his time in the infamous Abu Ghraib prison, was just an ordinary person like any of us, an everyday individual with solid principles, who cherished his family and believed he was serving his country with honor. Yet, immersed in an atmosphere where violence was normalized, dehumanization was rampant, and ethical oversight was absent, he became an instrument of unimaginable brutality. Was he inherently evil, or was he shaped by his circumstances? Context has the power to create a profound disconnect between who we truly are and how we behave in dire situations. Our morality is etched in sand, not stone. Understanding this helps explain the infamous simulated torture study known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. Over just a few days, ordinary, mentally sound college students assumed roles as guards and prisoners in a mock setup that rapidly spiraled into a nightmarish ordeal. Those acting as guards, shielded by uniforms that bestowed authority, began to humiliate and abuse the prisoners. What propelled these average people across that moral threshold? And if you found yourself in their shoes, would you truly act any differently? But this vulnerability isn't confined to extreme ordeals. Even minor, routine decisions reveal how context subtly sways us, often without our awareness. Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours, dismissing it as trivial? Or perhaps laughed at a harsh joke simply because the crowd around you erupted in chuckles? These seemingly insignificant slips are like stepping stones on a path toward the ethical abyss we so often discuss in hushed tones. This brings us to a pivotal question: to what extent do our actions mirror our true selves, and to what degree are they merely products of the environment enveloping us? Context doesn't just influence, it reshapes us. So, how can we stand against this invisible yet formidable force? Can we train ourselves to withstand situational pressures, or are we doomed to drift with the current? Why do we obey? It's a deceptively simple query, but its answer unveils one of the most disturbing facets of human behavior. From childhood, we're taught to respect and follow authority figures, parents, teachers, leaders, and such compliance often underpins societal harmony. But what happens when the authority we demand something that clashes with our core values? How far are we willing to compromise what we know is right, just to sidestep conflict or please a powerful presence? The Milgram experiment, a landmark in psychology, provides a chilling insight. Imagine being in a stark lab, where a figure in a white coat instructs you to administer electric shocks to another person each time they give a wrong answer. As the session progresses, the voltage escalates to potentially lethal levels. The recipient on the other end screams in agony, begging you to stop. yet the authoritative expert beside you urges, "Continue, it's essential for the study." Astonishingly, about 65% of participants complied all the way to the maximum shock, overriding their own conscience. Why? Because a person in a position of rank and uniform demanded it. What is it about authority that compels us to defy our instincts? The key lies in how we perceive those in power. We tend to assume they possess superior knowledge or moral accountability, leading us to believe that our questionable actions are validated by shifting the blame. After all, if things go awry, it's not our fault, it's the one who issued the command. This fosters a perilous gap between our deeds and their repercussions. Yet this blind obedience isn't limited to lab settings, it threads through history, from Nazi soldiers who claimed they were just following orders to tragedies like the Jonestown Massacre, where hundreds heeded a charismatic leader's directive and ended their lives. In each instance, it wasn't innate evil at play, but an inability to question authority. Ask yourself, how many times have you followed an instruction without a second thought, solely because it came from someone higher up? It might be something mundane, like a workplace directive, but what if it veered into something more grave? What if you were pressured into an act you deemed wrong, yet couldn't refuse? Would you muster the courage to challenge that power, or opt for the ease of compliance? Obedience to authority is a potent force, but it's not invincible. We can learn to recognize it, question it, and defy it when needed. This demands bravery and, above all, accountability, acknowledging that ultimately, we're always responsible for our actions, no matter who ordered them. And here's the issue, this blind obedience grows even more hazardous when paired with another alarming phenomenon, dehumanization, because once we stop seeing others as fully human, complying with cruel commands becomes far simpler. Let's explore the shadowy aspect further. How do you convince someone to treat another with brutality? The answer isn't just in orders or settings, but in something deeper, dehumanization. This age-old process is key to reducing another person to something less than human, something unworthy of empathy. When we view others as mere objects, threats, or statistics, acts that were once unthinkable become justifiable, even routine. Dehumanization is a sly, almost imperceptible psychological snare. It often starts with language, with labels that boil down a person's rich complexity to a single derogatory trait. Throughout history, we've witnessed this repeatedly. In Nazi concentration camps, Jews were called rats. During the Rwandan genocide, Tutsis were labeled cockroaches. These words didn't just describe, they reshaped reality, making it easier for people to turn a blind eye or, worse, participate in the atrocities that followed. And this isn't restricted to grand historical events. Dehumanization creeps into daily life on a smaller scale. Think about how society brands certain groups as lazy, thugs, or parasites. These tags forge an emotional chasm, a moral void that lets us overlook or excuse their suffering. Have you ever caught yourself using or accepting such labels without scrutiny? And what if those same labels were turned against you? Albert Bandura, a towering figure in psychology, conducted a straightforward yet revealing experiment. He asked students to punish another group. Beforehand, some heard derogatory descriptions of the targets, like animals. The outcome was stark. Those exposed to the labels inflicted far harsher penalties. A mere label sufficed to erode empathy and sanction cruelty. Now consider online interactions. Anonymity and distance embolden people to say things they'd never utter face-to-face. The person on the other side of the screen isn't a full human, they're an avatar, a profile. This digital dehumanization breeds a perfect storm for bullying, harassment, and hate-mongering. Have you ever joined in this cycle, perhaps unwittingly? And what might have halted it? Dehumanization is perilous because it's insidious. It doesn't require outright hatred, just a failure to see the full humanity in others. But there's a countermeasure: bring the hidden into the light. Remember that every individual is more than a label, they have a story, depths, a life. Empathy is the mightiest weapon against dehumanization, but it demands effort, the will to look beyond surfaces and listen to what's beneath the words. However, there's yet another element that amplifies dehumanization's grip: the erosion of personal accountability. When we believe our actions carry no consequences or that we're shielded by anonymity, evil can flourish unchecked. Have you ever wondered how some people commit unthinkable deeds without a shred of guilt? The answer frequently lies in this loss of personal responsibility, a psychological shift that severs the link between our actions and their outcomes. When we convince ourselves we won't be held accountable, something dangerous unfolds. Our morality, typically a steadfast guide, begins to unravel. This manifests alarmingly in anonymous situations or crowds where blame diffuses. A classic illustration is mob behavior. Individuals who alone would never smash a window or loot a store suddenly join in acts of vandalism. The sense that no one will know it was me creates a void where empathy and self-reproach are easily dismissed. Philip Zimbardo demonstrated this with a simple yet telling experiment. He abandoned a car in two contrasting neighborhoods, one in the Bronx, then a high-crime area, and another in Palo Alto, an affluent suburb. In the Bronx, the vehicle was vandalized within hours. In Palo Alto, it remained untouched. The difference? In the Bronx, anonymity was assured. In Palo Alto, the high chance of recognition curbed destructive urges. The lesson is clear: when we think our actions go untracked, we permit ourselves behaviors we'd shun under community scrutiny. The same logic applies online. Behind avatars and usernames, people often say and do things unimaginable in person. This is known as online disinhibition. Harsh comments, threats, or lies feel excusable because they don't seem real, yet their impacts are profoundly tangible for the recipients. Have you ever reflected on the weight of your words when you felt unseen? Beyond anonymity, another factor fuels this loss: diffusion of blame in hierarchies or large groups, where one thinks, "I only did my part, it's everyone's fault but mine." This played out in scandals like the Abu Ghraib abuses, where soldiers justified their conduct as just following orders. It occurs in corporations too, where dubious decisions by teams blur accountability among members. When no one is fully culpable, everyone becomes complicit. But can we combat this? The solution lies in actively owning our actions, even when it seems no one's watching. Embracing responsibility is an act of courage, requiring us to rethink not just the orders we receive, but the narratives we spin to excuse our choices. And there's an even more potent tool for perpetuating this loss and justifying dubious morals: language. When words mask reality, they transform the unacceptable into something palatable. What keeps us from tumbling into the abyss of cruelty when everything seems to push us there? The answer is deliberate choice. Resisting evil isn't about luck or innate talent. It's a skill we cultivate daily, moment by moment, through small acts that reaffirm our humanity and accountability. Conscious choice is an act of valor because it often means swimming against the tide. Consider the participants in the Milgram experiment who refused to continue shocking. They weren't inherently stronger or wiser than others, but when external cues screamed obedience, these individuals chose accountability despite the pressure, proving that true heroism isn't the absence of fear, but the resolve to confront it. This deliberate choice appears in everyday scenarios too. How often have you witnessed wrongdoing and opted not to intervene? It could be a rude remark in conversation or something as simple as receiving too much change and keeping it. Each moment is a test, an opportunity to uphold your ethics in a world that frequently tempts us to ignore them. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo contends that heroism isn't reserved for grand figures or epic moments. Instead, he sees it as an antidote to evil, arising when someone acts while others stand by. A prime example is Wesley Autry, known as the subway hero. He saw a man collapse onto the tracks during a seizure and, without hesitation, leaped down to save him, shielding the man with his body as the train roared overhead. Autry didn't plan to be a hero, he simply chose to act in that critical instant. But such choices often demand going against group norms, defying authorities, or enduring criticism. How do we prepare for them when the time comes? The key is vigilance, continuously fostering awareness of our actions and their ripples. This means challenging convenient stories, contesting unjust commands, and above all, remembering that every decision, no matter how small, shapes who we become. Conscious choice also hinges on something fundamental: the ability to see others in their full complexity and vulnerability. Without this connection, our decisions turn cold, driven only by convenience or fear. By recognizing the humanity in others, we recall that ultimately, we're all navigating the same fragile journey, and that realization changes everything.